I'm the best public speaker, so please forgive me if it kind of bounces around or seems kind of splotchy at times, but I'm glad that Chad is here. You can be my lawyer for my disclaimer. Make it legit that I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian. This seminar is going to be based on what Shannon and myself did over the past couple of years, and just pretty basic stuff that you can find from the web, okay? When you get into nutrition, there is a ton of controversy. You can pretty much, you know, if you think of any one thing, all right, eggs are good, you can probably find a website that tells you they're not, right? So some of the stuff that we talk about, you know, you might not agree with it 100%, and that's cool. You know, this is just my experience and pretty general rules of nutrition, all right? So, first we'll talk about this real quick, go over the importance of nutrition and how it relates to a couple of things. The most obvious one is your body, right? Everybody's kind of heard the whole thing about you can't out-work out your meals, but it's very easy to out-eat your workouts, okay? So, you know, if you're going to work out and you're going to eat like crap, you're kind of wasting your time in general, okay? You're going to have more energy, you'll be less stressed, better health. Your body markers, things like high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, thyroid, any health marker that you want to look at.
I got all those.
Yeah, exactly. So in general, better nutrition, better diet, all those markers are going to get better, okay? No doubt about it. There is a plethora of science showing that, okay? You eat terrible, all those things get worse. It's America, just look around, it's not that hard. You can look at me 2 years ago, I was in the same boat. It's easy to see, all right? It's going to impact your wallet, all right? Doctor's visits, medications, disease, hospital visits, you know, especially when you get older. You know, the general consensus is the better you take care of yourself now, right? The less health problems you'll have later, right? So nothing groundbreaking there. You know, and then directly on your wallet, like I said, medications, things like that, right? I would rather, and Shannon and myself have kind of made this a point, is I'd rather eat better now and not have to take $100 worth of pills for the rest of my life to counteract your high cholesterol and your high blood pressure or your diabetes. And I see it in patients every day. They come in, you know, I'm not an internal medicine doctor, but just even for eye exams, right? And they come in and they're taking 2 different things for their blood pressure, and that makes them take 2 more. I'm sure you see it too. And then they have to take something else because they're a side effect of their medication that they're taking for blood pressure, and that screws up their blood sugar, and then they got to take this, and then they end up having to eat a specific way. It's just a big cycle, all right? And your nutrition is going to impact CrossFit, okay? We're all members here, so, you know, and it also relates to your wallet. Memberships are not cheap, right? I always joke about ATC. It's not a $19 a month membership, okay? So, and that was probably the #1 thing when I first joined. I know I told Ty, when I first joined, you know, it's $150 a month, all right? If I'm going to pay $150 a month, I'm all in, right? I'm going to eat right, I'm going to come home and work out, I'm not going to work out once a week, and I'm not going to eat like crap and pay $150 for it, right? It's a lot easier to do that when you're paying $19 a month at ATC. You kind of maybe forget it, okay? So obviously it's going to impact your workouts as well, okay? And you can see it, people joke about it in here all the time, myself included, and you know, just most of us are regular, all of us are pretty much regular, I know you're newer, but you know, Tabitha and the girls will joke about the previous night they had a bunch of donuts and they come in and their workout sucks that day, you know, and you know, I'm hungover, right? I drank a bunch of alcohol last night. It's going to affect your workouts, okay? So you want to eat right, you want to work out right, you want to kind of have the whole package, okay? So pretty self-explanatory, all right? So just a general review of what you can eat and what's available, right? Food is broken down into 3 categories, right? Proteins, carbs, and fats, okay? So we got proteins, carbs, and fats. Pretty simple, all right? You have other things like vitamins and stuff like that, but in general, when we're talking about our food and what we're eating every day, we're talking about proteins, carbs, and fats, okay? Your proteins, that's what makes up your muscles, okay? I think it's 80% of your muscles, excluding water, if you're a good water weight, 80% of your muscle is protein and amino acids, okay? So obviously that's going to be important. You hear it all the time from your meatheads and people at the gym, I gotta have a protein. And, you can see the market for protein powders and protein shakes, which we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But protein bars, and they make candy and cakes out of protein and stuff now. So you have a lot of different types of proteins. All right, you have essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids, and your branched chain amino acids. Okay, your branched chains fall under the essential acids. You basically have, I think there's 22 of them. You have all these amino acids. It's all chemistry, right? They combine, they form protein molecules, and that builds your muscles. Okay. The main thing to know is that later when we talk about like protein powders and shakes and stuff, your essential amino acids and your branched chain amino acids are the important ones because your body cannot make those themselves. Right? You have to get those from outside sources. So you have to get those from plants or meat, or you've got to get it from your food. Okay. So the CrossFit definition and what myself and Shannon tried to shoot for. Your proteins should be lean, they should be buried, and it should account for about 30% of your calories. Okay? So later when we talk about the different types of diets, and we'll get into the 7 diet and stuff, just remember that your proteins are about 30% of your diet. Okay? Lean, you don't want a whole lot of fatty proteins. All right, if you're going to eat burgers, I think most of your burgers they have the percentages, 80, 10, 75, 25, 90, 10. All right, we tend to shoot more for the lean. If you're getting a steak, you want to try to find a piece like fat gives it flavor, and I don't mind a marbled steak, but you obviously want to find a piece that's higher quality, not just a bunch of fat bristle through there. Okay. I'm sorry.
Stay away from ribeyes.
Absolutely, yeah. Ribeyes are great. It tastes good, and not to say that you should never eat that, but again, these are just general guidelines. You always have choices, right? So if you're at the counter, all right, do I get this piece of meat or this piece of meat? 9 times out of 10, shoot for the one that's more lean. Okay. Over time, that's what's going to make you get smaller and lean up. Okay. So lean, buried. Buried is, it's important because if you eat the same thing every day, that gets old, right? Chicken and broccoli every meal for a week, and you're going to be done. Okay, so you got to mix it up. It also means it doesn't always have to be meat. Okay, most people think protein, and they immediately start thinking, paleo and steaks and bacon in every meal. Okay, but things like eggs, stuff that I don't necessarily eat, like tofu and black beans and lentils and things like that. Those are all protein, right? So you do have plant-based proteins as well, and there's nothing inherently wrong with those. In fact, they're very healthy, depending on who you ask. And again, I don't have a problem with them. It's just not something that I've decided to eat. Okay, but so that's what your buried is. So you just basically want lean and you want buried, high quality. All right. I didn't really make much mention throughout this of the whole like organic versus your Tyson meats and chicken and things like that. We do. I just consider that the higher quality. Okay. Organic, if available, grass-fed beef. You're going to pay more for that stuff. You pay a premium for it. Part of that premium is because it's popular, and you're paying the supply and demand, and they know people want that, so they're charging more for it. Okay. But we do generally try to stick to grass-fed beef, organic eggs, or at least eggs that are all cage-free and things like that. So And I didn't really focus too much on things like, if you have any questions about it, we can go over it, but like, there's a lot of buzzwords when it comes to your proteins, like the cage-free and organic, and really the only thing that is considered organic is if it has the USDA organic label, okay? If it says organically produced or anything like that, it doesn't actually have that seal and it hasn't been regulated as such, okay? That doesn't mean it's unhealthy, it just means it's not strictly organic, okay? When you see things like vegetarian fed, that doesn't necessarily mean organic either, right? Vegetarian fed just means they fed it corn or wheat, that's a vegetable, okay? Which can be a genetically modified GMO, getting into all that, okay? So when we're talking about paleo diet and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff you're gonna eliminate because it's inflammatory, all right? So that's proteins. All right, so when we're talking about protein shakes, in fact, just this morning, Brad Taylor and I were kind of talking about it at church, but I do it. A lot of people eat or drink protein shakes. It is a good source for your protein. I would say in general, you just have to look at yourself and know where your goals are, right? If you're trying to lose weight, which is what I did for the past year and a half, and I didn't take any protein shakes because it's just liquid calories. You should be able to get your proteins that you need from your food, okay? Protein shakes and your whey protein and things like that, like if you're looking to, if you're getting competitive and you're looking to add more muscle and you're having a hard time eating your calories, which most of us are not, then yeah, they're great, okay? So I did quickly go through the different types. You have basically your fast absorbing, which are going to be your whey proteins, and then you have your slow absorbing, which is what they call casein, okay? Your majority of your protein that you see on the shelves are going to be your whey protein isolates, okay? It's 90% or more fast absorbing protein, okay? Whey protein, when you work out or when your body needs protein, it absorbs that very quickly. It uses it very, very quickly, all right? So when you work out, you break your muscle tissue down, your body needs to start rebuilding that, it's going to absorb whey protein first, okay? You also have hydrolyzed whey, which is basically pre-digested. It's more expensive, it's more easily absorbed because it's pre-digested, but there's some arguments about is it as effective as just taking protein isolate, okay? And then you have whey protein concentration, or concentrate, which is just a lower percentage of whey. It's anywhere from 30 to 89% protein by weight. So it's it's basically a lower quality percentage-wise of protein in your shake. Okay. Your casein is your slow digesting protein. It works best on preventing your muscles from breaking down. All right. So when we do our WODs or we do our strength training, right, we're breaking all that muscle tissue down, and then your body has to rebuild it. That's metabolism in its basic form, right? You have to break down and then build back. Okay. So casein is going to help more with preventing it from breaking down and being super sore, things like that. All right. This basically, when it came down to me and Shannon taking it, we'll put some in our green smoothies in the morning for breakfast, stuff like that. We just said, hey, we'll find one that has both. All right. So they make protein blends that have whey protein isolate, fast absorbing. They also have one that has a mixture of casein in it. It's slow. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. And there are studies that kind of show that it's sort of nice. You get the blunting effect of the casein for breaking the muscle tissue down, and you get the fast absorption of the whey for building it back up. Okay, so just in general terms, if you're looking to build muscle, you can do it one of two ways. You can either prevent it from breaking all the way down when you work out, and then when it builds back up, it's going to be bigger, or you can just focus on it getting bigger on recovery, or you can do both. Okay. So, if you have any questions about the protein, I'm not an expert in protein shakes, but I can show you the ones that I use. And I know Ty can also talk to you about when you look at your protein scoops, it should tell you, the higher quality proteins are going to show you the breakdown of like how many branched chain amino acids they have in them. Leucine is your big one, okay? It should have something like 5 grams of leucine per scoop, okay? And then the one that I think it's glutamine is your bad one. Glutamine is a non-essential amino acid, meaning I'm pretty sure it means your body can make that naturally. You don't have to get it from an outside source. So if you get If you get a protein powder and it has a lot of glutamine and less leucine, it's probably going to be a little bit lower quality. It's not as effective as you're thinking it's going to be. Okay. Such proteins. So your carbs are where most people get in trouble. Right. So carbs get a really bad rap, and especially over the last 10 years. You know, the whole Atkins diet, low carb diet, this, and I'm definitely not a proponent of low carb. Okay, believe it or not, your carbs should account for the majority of your calories. Right, it should account for about 40% of your intake or more, depending on like if you're training for the games or something, and you're trying to get stronger, you might actually eat more carbs. Okay, so the whole you know, everybody has a coworker that isn't eating any carbs and they're always grumpy. And, that's what provides your body with glucose and your energy. Okay, so particularly when you're coming in here and you're beating yourself up doing these WODs and strength training, you've got to eat carbs. Okay, it's just there's no way around it. You can try the low carb diet and you will probably notice very quickly that it doesn't work so well. Okay, so when people think paleo, again, they think, oh, all I'm eating is a bunch of bacon and steaks and eggs and no carbs, and that's really not true. Okay, it's just when most people think of carbs, they think of all the wonderful, tasty carbs that you're not to eat. Okay, donuts and sugar and all that. Okay, what they don't normally think about is stuff like vegetables and fruits. Those are carbs, so you have to eat those. Okay, so there's a lot of controversy and confusion. So the easy way that I try to think about your carbs is you basically have your two. You basically have unprocessed, and then you have processed. Okay. So your unprocessed is going to be, for the purposes of this seminar, that's your good carbs. Okay. So that's your whole grains, your veggies, your fruits, right? It hasn't gone through a bunch of processing, all right? So we'll just say veggies and fruits. I'll be honest with you, when it comes to talking about breads and whole grain versus the whole wheat, the bleaching process, I don't even pay attention to it. But your processed foods are going to be like white bread. I know that's a processed bread, that's why it's white. Okay, pastries and sodas and stuff like that. Okay, so if it goes through a chemical plant, it's probably processed. All right, and if you think about it, just in general terms, right? Like white bread, for instance, it's processed. They strip all this stuff out of it. That's why it turns white, right? And that's why when you see on the packaging, it's like fortified with this and fortified with that. They have to add all that stuff back in, right? Because they strip it all out when they process it. Okay, so it makes it soft and it makes it tasty, and kids love it, and adults love it, but it's just horrible for you. Okay, so good with that. All right. The other way that we think about it, and the way that Shannon and I have been doing it, is you have low glycemic and you have high glycemic. Okay. Yeah, my spelling. Okay. Now, to me, this is what we kind of focus on. It's more important. The whole process versus unprocessed, that is kind of for us anyhow, that's just a no-brainer. Okay. Going back to when we started, I have this all-in mentality, paying all this money. I want to work out, I want to get results, and I want to do it the right way and not just waste my time. So pretty much if it's processed, we've already cut it out. So sodas and breads and things like that, or your pastas, we just pretty much don't eat those. Okay. I have a sweet tooth, right? I know y'all see me bring cakes and stuff up here, and some of them are paleo, some of them are not. And so obviously you're not going to do that 100% of the time. Okay? That's not what I'm saying, but just again, when you're making those choices, try to pick these, don't pick those, okay? It doesn't have to be all the time, but the majority of the time. The same thing with low glycemic and high glycemic. So the difference here, low glycemic carbs just means when you eat it, you don't get the blood sugar spike like you do with high glycemic foods, okay? I'm not going to go into, I could, but I'm just not going to do it. You have a whole process when you eat food, your blood sugar goes up, insulin and glucagon, and you're regulating blood sugar, and your pancreas and your liver's involved and all kinds of stuff, okay? In general, low glycemic means your blood sugar does not go up as high. High glycemic means it goes up high, okay? High glycemic foods are going to typically be your processed stuff, okay? Jelly, the ones I wrote down just as examples. Jelly and ketchup and candy and french fries, okay? But other things too. Corn, beets, rice, okay? Those are high glycemic foods. It doesn't mean they're bad for you. It just means it's a high glycemic food, okay? I'm not sitting here telling you that there's anything unhealthy about rice, okay? That's ridiculous. But particularly if you have blood sugar issues, that's going to be important to you, all right? If you're a diabetic or you're a pre-diabetic, you probably need to watch how much of that stuff you eat, okay? And you need to be checking your blood sugar and things like that. So low glycemic foods are going to be pretty much all your vegetables, with some exceptions, apples, black beans, okay, stuff like that, all right? In a minute, when we look at the PDF that I sent y'all on the phone, there is an entire list of low glycemic and high glycemic foods, okay? Your fruits, and some of them, they fall into different categories, like sweet potatoes or high glycemic. So you have little asterisk spots, some of them, your tropical fruits, watermelons and mangoes and kiwis and things like that. They kind of fall in the middle. Like they classify some of them as low glycemic and other ones as high glycemic. And so we just took the stance of, I try not to eat, 5 mangoes a day, right? It's all about moderation, okay? So if I want to eat a mango or a watermelon, I'll do it and just kind of, mentally note that I'm not going to eat 5 bananas in a day, right? I eat one for breakfast and I'm trying to eat 3 more of them at night, all right? Your high glycemics are going to be usually your starches, your starches. Again, sweet potatoes. They're usually going to be sweet foods, your beets, stuff with a lot of sugar in them, okay? Your low glycemics are going to be more of your veggies and fruits and whatnot, okay? Beans, stuff like that. So we'll get more into that when we talk about the actual diets, okay? But I just made a note. In general, you basically want to eat low glycemic over high glycemic, and you want to eat unprocessed over processed, okay? So if you wanted to make a little flow chart, you would want to eat unprocessed, low glycemic. That would be your first choice, and then the middle, and then basically over here your bad would be your processed high glycemic. That would be what you don't want to eat a lot of. Okay, that's going to be your chocolate cake with icing. So CrossFit, they promote that approach. Okay, they want you to avoid what is called hyperinsulinemia. Okay, which is just an increase in your blood glucose. It spikes. Your body responds less and less efficiently at lowering your blood sugar. Okay, and then it leads to the triad of diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. Which, if you don't know that's bad, it's bad. Okay, you don't want to have that stuff. So they focus on those 4 categories, trying to keep your blood sugar down. So, just as a reminder, you're not cutting out carbs, you're just trying to cut out bad carbs. Okay, so you got good carbs and bad carbs, because it actually does account for the majority of your diet, okay, or should. So your last thing is your fats. Fats are another one that can be confusing. It's still confusing to me, and I made a vain effort at trying to classify them and then kind of gave up. But your fats are going to be your oils, your fats, and your lipids. Okay, so nuts and seeds in general are going to be your fats. Okay, your butters, your oils, the things you cook with. Okay, all those terms are interchangeable when it comes to talking about the macronutrient of fat. Okay, so that's your oils, seeds and nuts. Your fats, okay, your lipids. So, I know in the 90s, that was the thinking was low-fat diets were kind of the fad, right? Everybody remember Olestra? You probably don't, because you were like 2. But if you remember like Olestra, or you remember like, I think it was Snackwell, they started making all those cookies with fat-free cookies, right? Everything's fat-free. We went through this whole fat-free phase, okay? And it didn't turn out so well, right? They thought that lowering fats in your diet would lower fat on the body, which is not technically correct, okay? Of course, when they started replacing everything with the fat, they replaced it with sugars and starches and carbs, which made it even worse. So then all of a sudden, carbs got the bad rap, and you had Atkins, and everybody's on a low-carb diet, and they found out that that's terrible too, right? So it's all about balance, it's all about moderation. Most of the diets nowadays, especially the ones you're in the CrossFit box, you know, paleo and clean eating and zone diet and things like that. Those are more, they're more about balance and just knowing your good foods and your bad foods. Okay, your bad fats and your good fats. Your fats are broken down. You have saturated fats, unsaturated fats, which can be your cis and your trans. Everybody knows trans fats are bad. They cut those out of the food and everything. You can have monounsaturated, you can have polyunsaturated. I wasn't sure how long my talk was going to take. I was going to write all that stuff down and tell you what they all are. The ones I would focus on, there's a lot of controversy. You have your saturated fats, which in the past were bad, okay? You don't want to eat too many saturated fats. It's typically going to be your animal fats, okay? Butter, like dairy, like full fat dairy, things like that. Lard, you know, the big paleo one now is ghee, which is just clarified butter, okay? So heat up butter, scrape off the stuff on the top, what you're left with is ghee. Okay, that's what you cook with. There's a lot of debate about how bad they are. You know, the FDA, you know, they'll tell you that, you know, when you look on the back of your labels and it says saturated fat, it'll say 1 gram of saturated fat is like 80% of your daily intake, right? So you're not supposed to eat a lot of those, okay? Me personally and Shannon, I don't bother with that a lot, okay? We cook our eggs in ghee, and we cook with a lot of coconut oil and all the paleo type stuff. And my numbers have only, and again, it's just me, but my numbers have only gotten better, right? So when we go to Life Signs and they check our HDLs and our LDLs and the good ones and the bad ones, like all the numbers are going in the right direction. Okay, so put what faith you want in that about what's good and bad for you. I will say that I think everybody's kind of on the same page that your unsaturated fats that have the trans fats, those are terrible for you, okay? It's kind of hard to get those now. I mean, most everything is trans fat free, you know. It's, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that we eat where I'd actually look to make sure that have trans fats in it, okay? But following the same thing as this, where you kind of have your guideline of what you want to eat, basically with your fats, you're looking at polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, okay? That's going to be your stuff, olive oil, okay? A lot of your seed oils, like avocado oil and stuff that's been real, what I call like hippie food in the past. Like, you know, it's kind of hard to find. You have to go to Whole Foods or stuff to find it. Like, Kroger doesn't carry, you know, walnut oil or, you know, they do now, but not in the past. So those are going to be your monounsaturated and your polyunsaturated, as well as your omega-3s, and then there's omega-6s and omega-9s, okay? So stuff like fish, that's a protein, is real high though in omega-3s. Okay? Those are your fatty acids. Those all fall under your mono and polyunsaturated fats, okay? Those are your, what I would just say are your go-to fats, okay? After that is going to be your saturated fats, okay? Which is what coconut oil and ghee and your full fat, like, we don't use it much, but I think there's one called tallow. I think it's like duck fat or something. And people cook with that a lot. I don't use it, but that's it. Those are saturated fats, okay? And then the stuff you want to kind of put last is going to be your unsaturated fats, okay? So there is a ton of websites and research that you can look at for what fats to use, and depending on if you're going to stick to a specific diet, you're going to cut some of these out. Like, we pretty much don't use vegetable oil or canola oil, safflower oil. There's all these oils, rapeseed oil. Some of those are technically paleo, and some of them are not. it's all about just if you want to use it or not, okay? But a lot of your unsaturated fats are going to cause inflammation, okay? And they have issues with when you cook them in higher temperatures, they turn into these different chemicals that can, you know, apparently cause cancer and stuff like that. So they're starting to see problems with these, and you know, again, most of us are old enough to at least remember somewhat that, you know, they used to say butter, it's terrible for you, right? Your saturated fats, no butter, so they started making margarine, and now you see what margarine is doing to people. So take from it what you will. But general rule, you want to stick with your mono unsaturated and polyunsaturated, no trans fat. Limit your saturated fats, okay? When we cook with butter, I don't put a whole freaking tablespoon in there or anything. You know, I don't really keep up with it either. Coconut oil, and when stuff calls for coconut oil or butter, I don't, you know, sit there and think, oh, that's a lot of saturated fat. Do it. All right, again, you look at the FDA, Mayo Clinic, and stuff like that versus the newer diet models like paleo and the zone diet and stuff. You're going to have a lot of conflicting information on what fats to eat, what's good, what's bad, how much. You know, I didn't even mention, like, the thing about eggs, you know, there's a lot of cholesterol in eggs, and you know, people think, oh, you gotta, you know, you look at on the back of your label, and it'll say one egg is like 62% of your daily cholesterol, and your guys, and I know me and John Rhodes are guilty of it when you only eat 4 and 5 eggs, and so I mean, 300% of my cholesterol in 5 minutes. But there's a lot of studies that show, and just personal experience, I've been doing that for 2 years now, and my cholesterol is way better than it was when I was, you know, not paying attention to that stuff. Okay, so general review: proteins, carbs, and fats. I think most people are familiar with that. Any questions?
Question on the high and low glycemic stuff. Is there anything on the nutritional content on the packaging other than sugars? I mean, that's what I think about. Is there anything that's going to specifically identify itself as low or high?
Not that I'm aware of. The only ones I can tell you that it's not going to be anything that you're eating, but like I know, like if you go to Kroger, they have like those diabetic bars. They're like energy bars, and it does say on there like this is a low glycemic food. And if you look at it, I'm not sure if that just means they're using low glycemic ingredients, you know, honey and, you know, versus just raw cane sugar or something, or if they're just substituting something else for the carbs. Like I don't know if it's just a, you know, you get like these, like the lar bars and stuff, and you know, the reason they're low sugar is just because you're eating a bunch of fat, just a bunch of nuts and seeds, and you know, then a little bit of carbs and some protein. So, but otherwise, no. The only reason I know which ones they are is because what we'll get into with the zone diet, there's a whole list, and you just kind of learn. You have to, it's really overwhelming at first, but it's not really that big. Once you kind of get the gist of it, it's not that hard. And once you see the list and you start associating which ones are high and low, you can kind of figure out if something else, if somebody throws something at you, you know, well, what about a kiwi? And you can kind of figure out if it's low or high based on what you remember from the other ones. So, but no, as far as I know, there's not a lot of labeling of this is a low glycemic or this is a high glycemic food. Again, when we get into the list, we'll kind of figure it out. And like I said, usually if it's processed, just the ones I wrote down, like ketchup, candy, fries, okay, it's going to be high glycemic. All right, if it's unprocessed, much greater likelihood of it being low glycemic. So the vegetables, whether they're raw or cooked, with few exceptions, are going to be low glycemic. And the ones that are, the main one that I think of is sweet potatoes. I eat sweet potatoes. I bring them in almost every time I come to the gym. And sweet potatoes are technically high glycemic. But it's one of those things where it's almost like they're so healthy, they have so many nutrients in them that you just almost ignore that. And like when we talk about the paleo diet, certain things when people talk about bean, like one of the main knocks on paleo is that you're cutting out all these foods that are super healthy, like beans and lentils and stuff like that. And, you know, most of your paleo diet, people will still eat green beans because they're so healthy that even though it's technically a bean, telling somebody not to eat a green vegetable is just a bad idea. Right? Don't eat that because it's a bean. You know, that's not healthy. That's not paleo. So yeah, you always have exceptions, but yeah, I don't think there's any labeling on the packages that I can think of.
I mean, what I've encountered with their labeling is, it's mainly to encourage people to eat that product. It's not necessarily regulated by the government to say whether it's high or low glycemic, but if you see it labeled as low glycemic, then the odds of you buying it are going to be higher. So it's a manufacturing marketing thing.
Yeah, like a buzzword. Yeah.
Nick, are there any particular, I guess, other labels? I mean, like sugars, for instance. You know, that's on every label.
Yeah.
The sugars. I didn't know if there were particular identifiers to look for on the label.
There
Well,
are.
I mean, the word sugar can be transformed into so many other words that you are going to be, I mean, it's like a gazillion different words for sugar.
Yeah.
So they can hide that there's sugar in there.
So yeah, there's two different. Yeah. So are you talking about like in the ingredient list, or are you talking about on the regular?
I was just thinking that just the general nutritional label.
Okay.
If
Because
there's identifiers in that.
right, because like what she's talking about, like when they list the ingredients at the bottom, and like just because it doesn't say sugar doesn't mean it doesn't have sugar in it. Because they'll call it cane crystals or yeah. I should have read that down. I can find it pretty quick if you want to. But yeah, there's like this whole list of if it has like certain words at the end of it, like I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, there's like 20 different words that basically mean sugar. And the one that I always think of is like when they call it like cane molasses or something. Sugar, right? So yeah, but then there's also a difference in when you're looking at it tells you the total number, the total grams of fat, and then when it says carbs, and it might say 20 carbs, and then it'll say 15 sugars, right? So that can be good and bad because like if you eat an apple, that has a lot of natural sugar in it, so I can't remember off the top of my head, but like an apple might have 20 grams of sugar, okay? And it was really confusing to me at first as we were reading about this on the CrossFit. It's talking about trying not to eat more than like 50 grams of sugar a day. I'm like, well, holy crap, I just ate an apple that has